Welcome to the ryoknits podcast. My name is Rhiannon and I am a maker living in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I have been a knitter for about 6 years, and so I consider myself to be a intermediate knitter. And I always start my episodes by saying that because I think there are a lot of knitting podcasts where people have been knitting for 10, 20 years, and I just think there's value in having someone who's a little bit newer to it coming in, and that's part of why I started this podcast. So welcome. Thank you for being here. I am wearing my botanic shawl because it's a little chilly. I'm drinking some hot teas and it is keeping me warm. And the reason I'm not wearing anything warmer is because I wanted to wear one of my most recent finished objects, which is this beautiful blouse. It's the pattern is the Wiksten, and I've just modified it a lot over time to get the exact fit that I want. And I used some fabric that I think maybe I showed in a previous episode that I had purchased at an antique store. So I spent like $6 on this beautiful white eyelet fabric. I will insert a photo of the shirt as well so you can see it. And I put a little tag in that says this is the back because I love having those tags. They kind of make me smile in addition to being functional. So I think that's always a bonus, right? And I feel really proud of this. I'm also making a pair of pants that I made, and I just shared a video of them on Instagram. This whole outfit is something that I just knew I wanted to have, and this is my first time sewing pants, so I'm really proud of them, even though I clearly made the wrong size. Well, I really struggle with knowing what size to make on things, and I don't know if this happens to other people, but you know, you measure yourself several times and you think you know what size you need to make, and it turns out to be a little off. So I think next time I make these pants, I have more insight into adjustments I will make to fit my particular shape and like the length of the leg for sure, because I'm only 5'2". Sadly, I like to think of myself as being taller, but I am not. So, yeah. So I just dove right in and told you about some finished objects, which is great. But first, I wanted to do a little intro and announcements. So, announcements. I mean, I feel like I did the intro. My name's Rhiannon. I'm a knitter. Hi. And the announcement, the first one I want to make is that I'm going to be releasing a pattern really soon. I'm really excited about it. This is a pattern that I didn't have anybody test knit because it's a really simple cowl and it's just knit in a tube, and the ends are grafted together. However, I am going to be recording and releasing with the pattern a tutorial on how I grafted the ends together, because not everyone likes doing a provisional cast on or wants to do that. And so I have kind of a different technique that I used in this pattern, and I think that's going to be part of the value of what you get with the pattern. It didn't feel like asking people to test knit it was worthwhile either, because it is really, really simple. If you can knit in the round and you know even just the very, very minimal elements of stranded color work, you're going to be fine. So this is the cowl. It is well, it's two colors. It has this really fun Greek key and I don't know, triangle motif. The pattern is called Bayview. As soon as I get photos and finish some of the edits on it, I will be sharing this and publishing it. I chose to graft the ends straight rather than doing like a infinity loop. So I have pretty much a, you know, straightforward thing going on here. Now it's designed to where you wrap it twice and you just use two colors. I suppose you could add as many colors as you want. This is a cowl that I kind of envisioned I would wear on hikes when it's really chilly and I want something very, very warm to like swaddle my head. If you're like me, you don't always want to wear a hat, but you want your ears covered. And sometimes the best way to get there is to have a big cowl that comes up. So I know winter's coming to a close, but maybe you are like me and you want to get outdoors and do spring activities long before spring has officially sprung. So this would be a good place to start. And I'm pretty excited to release that. I think I will be releasing it in the month of April. I had imagined it would come out in March, and that's just not where my making took me. So really getting the right pattern photographs is going to be my next sort of move with this. But if you are at all interested in looking for a pattern to knit a 2-color cowl and do a kind of a different technique for grafting together the edges, then keep your eyes peeled for the Bayview cowl. And I will just tell you really quickly what I used for the yarn. So this is, it's technically a DK weight, but it's alpaca. So it will work with like a sport weight at the same gauge and you'll get the same size. So if you're using wool, I would say go for sport weight because alpaca is a little bit heavier. So both in terms of strand thickness and also in terms of just yardage per, the weight, like how many yards you get per 100 grams. Alpaca is going to be, it's going to say DK and act more like a sport. So that's the first thing to know. But it is incredibly warm and incredibly soft because this is the Galler Yarns Prime Alpaca Heathers. And so I use the color Natural, which is like a completely undyed, unbleached, natural, beautiful alpaca fiber. And then this color is Crater Lake Blue. So it's a really beautiful heathery blue. I think you may or may not be able to see, but there's a lot of different tones in there. It's got some kind of purple tones and some aqua tones. I mean, it's just beautiful. And I love blue and I love blue and white together. So this was just a really interesting labor of love, and I'm very excited to be bringing it to you. I have been designing in my head for many years, and I have a few patterns published, so you will find them on Ravelry. I always encourage folks to reach out to me if Ravelry is not accessible to you, and I will find a way to get you the pattern. I mean, I have PayPal and I have Venmo, and there are ways, so I don't want anyone to feel left out, but because I'm more of I don't want to say side hustle, but maybe hobbyist designer, if that makes sense. It's not my main bread and butter career. So I really am mindful of how much energy and time I expend on trying to sell things that I am doing more for the love of it than as a career. And I don't think I'm, I wouldn't say, so this is like a whole like compensation philosophy lecture, but essentially, it just makes sense for me to use Ravelry for sales. That period. That's it. That said, I did just add or create an account on Ko-fi or Ko-fi. I have released a couple of free patterns, and I want people to be able to thank me if they want to. But what I was really thinking about when I created it was that I want to do a series of knitter interviews, and my time is a donation to the podcast, to the channel. I'm never going to ask you to pay me to do something that I do for fun. And I have very strong feelings about podcasts that monetize without giving you a really clear sense of what that money is for. Which isn't to say that I don't think content creators should be paid. That's not the same conversation. It's not the same thing. But I do have the $15 a month that I pay for Zoom, which is really, I'm paying for being able to have video calls as long as I want with recording and cloud storage. So that is an ongoing cost associated with doing interviews. If you like knitter interviews, I have one out already. I interviewed Danielle, who has a podcast as well, and who is also just a really smart and talented and experienced knitter with a lot of wisdom to impart. And so, you know, I really am just saying, you know, if you wanted to support the interviews specifically, that's what coffee is for. And I don't want, you know, to be asking people for money, so this might be the last time I ever mention it. Okay, so on to finished objects, and I have a lot of finished objects to share. So I already showed you the blouse and the pants that I'm wearing. I have other FOs for which I'm gonna just insert a photo because not all of them are somewhere handy where I can show them to you. So the first one is a shawl that I knit for a charity auction. So it's called Subtle Interruption, and the pattern is Subtle Interruption from Espace Tricot. They have some amazing free patterns. So if you are a newbie knitter and you just want to make something, or even an experienced knitter who just wants something that's pretty easy to do, but like you get a lot of bang for your buck, so to speak, it's just very beautiful. I would highly recommend looking at Espace Tricot's patterns, and also Purl Soho, but I think Espace Tricot has done, I think, a better job of photographing things in a way that makes them feel like there's just something kind of elevated about their photography. I think Purl Soho's photography is great too. I think they're showing you kind of a nice blank slate, but there's some little extra, I don't know, maybe it's just because it's French. But this pattern I think is so beautiful, and it was a really fun pattern to do. So there was a lot of purling involved, but I think it's good to have patterns sometimes where you purl a lot because you use different muscles, so you're less likely to get a repetitive stress injury or aggravation on a joint. And it also, I think, there's just something about like a big swath of stockinette stitch that there's kind of a meditative quality, I think, to knitting a lot of knit stitches and then knitting a lot of purl stitches, and like this sense that you are building it like laying bricks to form a wall. I mean, it's really nice. And this, I will definitely be knitting this pattern again in colors that are more me. I chose these other very bright, vibrant colors because they felt very springtimey to me, because the main color yarn was one that I wanted to showcase for this project, and I hope that it will do well and raise some funds for a very worthy organization. And the next finished object are the Luminary socks. I can't recall if I shared these before, but I don't think I have yet. So I have completed this pair of socks, and they have been worn and were just in the wash pile, and I pulled them out. So they're a little out of shape, but basically you can see it's a sock with a kind of textured pattern with a little bit of lace going on down the front, and it continues all the way down, you know, to the toe. It has a heel flap and gusset with a slip stitch heel, which I think is very nice looking. It's just, it's a really handsome pattern. It's got twisted rib at the top. There's just so much about this that, you know, it's a really well-written pattern, and I've, you know, kind of come around to, I want to buy sock patterns because just like I could knit a plain raglan, but oftentimes I buy a sweater pattern because I want that designer's take on it, right? And I want something a little more than just the basics. So I'm feeling that way about sock patterns. I don't want just basic socks. I feel like if I'm going to take the time to hand knit them, they need to be really beautiful. So this was a pair for my wife. I might make myself a pair eventually. But there's a lot of other sock patterns I want to explore first. The next thing, also for my wife, I knit for the second time the pattern Felix. So I had made myself one a couple years ago, and it was not super successful because I picked a yarn that was a little bit of an experiment. So I'll try to link the episode that where I talk about that experience, either above if I can, remember to do that, or in the show notes. But I knit this for my spouse. I used some Woolfolk Luft that I had in my stash. It is a very soft, really bulky weight yarn. It's kind of bulky, so I knit an Aran sweater with a bulky weight yarn. It worked out fine. It was a little difficult. I struggle with needles above a size 8. I feel like they always feel really clunky to me, and they kind of slow me down. I feel like I can knit on like a size 4 or 5 way faster than I can on a size 10, which is strange because you're usually, it's a finer gauge and you're doing more stitches, but it just seems to go faster. So this took me a little longer than I expected, but I used these bulb stitch markers to kind of indicate how many days I worked on it. So, that wasn't like a full day. It was just like, today I picked it up and worked on it, add a little stitch marker. And I just do that sometimes to like give myself a visual on how long it really takes, because I don't knit one thing at a time. And sometimes I feel like it takes me 6 months to make something start to finish, but it's nice to see that visual reminder and go, actually, it really has only been a few weeks. So all in all, it was less than 3 weeks to knit that sweater, but I couldn't work on it every day, and I couldn't work on it like every time I sat down to knit either. So I think it's a hit. I think they like it, and I'm happy to have that off the needles. So a few more kind of finished objects that I didn't anticipate having for this podcast, but which I will briefly mention, is I've done some sewing. So obviously this outfit is one. I also was doing some spring cleaning and organizing of my yarn stash and my fabric stash, and I thought I will just tackle some of these kind of to be done / work in progress sewing projects that I have. So the first one was this project bag, which I just did a really simple block patchwork with a lot of, obviously, I love blue, a lot of different blue fabrics that I had in stash. There goes a train. And then it's fully reversible so that this could be the inside or the outside, and then the outside or the other side is just a solid navy canvas. I did kind of a different like pull tie on these, where I just took some fabric and sewed it around the ends of the cotton rope thing for the drawstring, and so it kind of forms like a little like handle-y thing. And then I put one of these little tabs in case I don't know what these are for. I don't really like clip my project bag onto anything, but if I ever did, there's a tab there. I sort of made it just, I don't know, I just felt like it. And I don't really use a pattern for project bags either. I just sort of make them for fun for myself. Sometimes I give them away. Sometimes I try to sell some on Etsy. So, which I think I'm gonna stop doing. I don't know, because there's like an Etsy boycott that's gonna happen. So we'll see how that goes. I'm not crossing a picket line to sell some crap that I don't need to sell. So yeah, first work in progress that I picked up and finished, and I ended up changing it a little bit, but the point is I have a nice big project bag. It's probably about 12 inches deep. The the base of it is about 5 inches, 4 or 5 inches wide. So, you know, it's pretty roomy. It's sweater size for sure, or a big shawl. The next, I just had some mending projects. So I mended a nightgown that I wear all the time, which is basically like a very long t-shirt. And I just mended it because it was starting to tear in the underarm. So, you know, that's kind of a boring but like necessary mend, right? If you love something, you have to take care of it. So I tend to find with things like t-shirts and jeans that the older they get, the more comfortable they get. And so I would rather mend it and have something that's like worn in and soft versus like just buying a new thing. Not only from an environmental and slow fashion kind of standpoint, but also just from a comfort standpoint. So in that spirit, I did another mend on a pair of jeans that I have mended before. My jeans tend to have inner thigh blowouts periodically. And so I think this might be the 3rd time I've mended this pair of jeans. And the fabric is so soft now at this point that I don't want to let them go. So I just took some canvas and some heavy canvas and filled it in. And then I did a really fun, almost like rainbowy stitch on that because I was like, you know what, this time I'm gonna go for kind of a more visible mend. And I'm keeping an eye on a couple spots on the leg too, because it's like, it probably doesn't look like much on screen. There's like a little loose fuzz, but I can see up close that there's a lot of wear in this area, and I feel like the knee is gonna blow out soon. So I'm gonna wait for that to happen, you know, and then I'm gonna patch it because I can't quite tell what direction it's gonna blow out in. It almost looks like it could be a vertical tear, but I don't know. So before I don't want to reinforce it and then have it tear past that, if that makes sense. So yeah, so I just did another mend on a pair of jeans that's like really worn in and comfortable. And then of course, I've got a couple other things that I'm still going to be kind of sewing and finishing up in the spirit of tying up loose ends or mentioning things, shameless self-promotion, whatever you want to call it. I do have some of these zipper pouches left, and they're currently in my Etsy shop. Don't know how long that's gonna last, but I went on like a zipper pouch sewing spree a month or 2 ago and just like made a bunch of these little like pencil pouches. So if you need one, a notions pouch, there's a bunch of these in there. I just find that sometimes it's like I get in a flow and I don't want to make just like one little thing. I want to make like 10 or 20 of something, but then I will never want to make them again. So when they're gone, but also like, you know, they might, I don't know. These could be giveaway prizes. They could be a lot of things, right? But I thought it was worth mentioning because, I have those, and that's another way to support. If you feel like you want to thank me for a free pattern or whatever, that's another way to do it. So, let's talk about works in progress. I am averaging 3 whips, 3 works in progress at all times, and I think that's my happy place. I don't think I want more than that. I'm not counting designs because designs ebb and flow in a completely different way than, you know, my regular making. So as far as works in progress go, I have a pair of socks that I'm making for my mother-in-law, and they're in this really cute little bag that I got from a little local market here. They had, there's a Peruvian restaurant, and then they had a little Peruvian market, and there's some pretty cool stuff. So anyway, I'm making the sock pattern called Blueberry Waffles. Here's one completed sock. So as you can see, it's like a waffle texture pattern. It's pretty simple. you start at the cuff and you knit down and do I think this is also a slip stitch heel. So heel flap and gusset, which gives you a nice fit. And then you just knit until you're ready to do the toe. And at that point you stop doing the waffle on the bottom. So this yarn is a kind of self-striping. I feel like it's not really like a regular stripe. Well, it's not a regular stripe pattern, okay? But you can see that it's got a lot of variegation and it kind of gives a stripe effect. So this is the West Yorkshire Spinners holiday yarn, one of the Christmas colorways called Starry Night, and it's got stellina in it to make it, you know, glittery. So I'm not sure if you can see that, but it sparkles. So awesome, right? And I've got the second sock and I'm just working on the foot now. So this was like, I bought this yarn to make a pair of socks for my mother-in-law for Christmas because I made her a pair of socks last year and she really loved them. So also we have the same size foot, so it's really easy to make her socks because I don't have to, you know, do anything. I just try them on as I go because I'm gonna wash and block them, you know, in the end. And by blocking, I just mean I'm gonna wash them and then lay them flat to dry. So yeah, so I have just the rest of the foot to go. She visited recently and I thought I would be able to give them to her then, but I didn't get them done. And then of course, you know, when you have a house guest, you just have like less knitting time, especially an out of town guest, because you're showing them sites and whatever. So didn't get them done. They might be like a birthday gift instead. I don't know, but you know, I don't do time-based gifts anyway. I just don't. It's like I always tell people, if I'm making you something, you'll get it when it's done, you know. The next project I have on the needles in another me-made bag is the newsprint cowl from Purl Soho. This pattern, I'm telling you, I put this in my favorites on Ravelry. I put this in my queue the year I became a knitter. It was one of the first patterns I ever planned on making, and I'm just now getting to it. And I've had this yarn in my stash for at least a year, possibly a year and a half. I feel like it was like a birthday 2020 gift or something. And I specifically asked for it because I was like, I'm never gonna get around to making this unless, I don't know, something prompts me, even though I really want it. And now just felt like the right time. So this is a very simple pattern. It's a free pattern. I'm not giving anything away. So you have kind of a rolled hem, and then and you just do that by knitting stockinette and then knitting, like changing what's the right side, what's the wrong side, right? So then you start knitting on the purl side and purling on the knit side. So you can kind of see that that's like stockinette and then it becomes the purl side. And what I did is, you know, when I knit in the round and then I suddenly have to purl, I actually just slip a stitch and start going back the other way. And that works just fine. But you just do this simple, you know, 2 stripes of one color, of the light color, and then 1 stripe of black, and then it looks like newspaper print on the back. And I don't know, you know, it's just like the journalism nerd in me. I love this. I love this pattern so much. I think I'm getting a pretty neat join. It could be better, but I'm gonna put it in the back. I don't really care. And this is gonna be just like a really slouchy, nice cowl. It's soft. It's so soft. This is Purl Soho's line weight, and it is like just the most buttery soft yarn. And so it's a single ply, which I think is part of it. That gives you a lot of drape and sheen and plump, like soft squishiness. But yeah, I'm actually using this to practice knitting continental style. So I don't believe that there's a right or a wrong way to knit. I think that the way you knit is, you know, kind of like your business. But I want to learn how to, well, I know how to knit continental style. I want to get better at tensioning my yarn, because when I knit continental, what happens is my stitches are real tight, because the only way I know how to tension yarn appropriately is using these fingers. So trying to do it with these fingers for whatever reason doesn't work, and I end up doing most of the work of tensioning with my index finger, or you know, the finger next to it where the yarn is held between. And then I end up doing more of a scooping thing versus like flicking with this finger. So long story short, I just want to practice, and this is a great pattern to do it because it's all just like knitting in the round. And you just, you know, change colors every couple rows. So what I am hoping is that by the end of this, I will be a lot better at matching tension in whether I'm knitting English style or continental style, because when I do stranded color work, I want to be able to strand one yarn in each hand. I have a friend who knits that way, and it looks like a really awesome way to keep your yarns like managed, because a lot of times with stranded color work or just any kind of color work, you have, you know, you got two balls of yarn and they're rolling past each other or whatever. So I think being able to strand one in each hand and get an even tension would be like so rad. So that's kind of why I'm practicing this. I have an idea that I want to do a stranded colorwork cast on later this year, and so this will help me, you know, improve my technique, and yeah. And it's also just something I've been wanting for a really long time, and it's so pretty. I mean, either side, the striped side or the newsprint side, is really pretty. And I just have a little moment of appreciation for that. What a beautiful design. And I didn't realize that this was a design by Michelle Wong, but it is. So there you go. That, I don't know why that makes it even better, but because it just makes sense. She's known for very elegant, sophisticated designs. So I feel 10 times fancier knowing that she designed this now. So that is my second work in progress. My third work in progress, living in this bag that I made. I don't know why I'm showing you the bags other than, isn't this fabric fantastic? We just appreciate it. I bought this as dead stock and have never found anything like it at all anywhere else. So sad day. I am knitting the Marble Mount Pullover by Joji Locatelli. And this is where I was at mentally when I decided to cast this on. I didn't really want to cast on a sweater because I have several sweaters that I've sort of stalled in the middle of and not continued with. But like I said, I was cleaning out some yarn and just organizing my stash, and I had this yarn that I really thought was just giving me a lot of joy. It's very, I don't know, I got spring vibes from it, and look at that color. This color is so happy. It's purpley blue. I'm calling it blurple. It's, yeah. And the other thing is that I saw a comment somewhere. I don't remember who said it. I think it may have been Instagram, but it may have been a YouTube podcast, where someone said that their goal was to not stash things forever because they wanted to be able to buy yarn and cast on a pattern when they first see it and when their excitement is at its peak. And that comment has just stuck with me, because I think that obviously I've been kind of like wanting to not stash things, and I've talked a lot about that. I have a lot of anxiety around like unfinished business and to-do lists And while yarn is beautiful, it does not, to me, it doesn't look like beautiful home decor. It looks like unfinished business, or, you know, it really showcases the gap between what I think I can get done and what I can actually get done, and how I tend to be really optimistic around time and motivation. So I will buy a yarn fully intending to cast something on and then not do anything with it for a while. Also, I had bought this yarn at a time when I wasn't really planning on buying yarn, but it was a one-of-a-kind colorway, and it's superwash sock yarn. So it's 10% nylon, 90% merino, and I haven't had a lot of luck with knitting with superwash yarn in garments. I tend to have issues with gauge, with the way it grows after blocking and doesn't seem to stop growing. And I just haven't had a lot of luck with it. So I had been on the lookout, knowing that I had bought this yarn and I had enough for a sweater and I didn't want to break it up into like 5 different projects. I had been on the lookout for a pattern that uses superwash yarn, a pattern that I like. And when this pattern came out, I was really excited about it, and it was really beautiful. And I was thinking like immediately that this pattern would be great for this yarn. So I cast it on, wanting to kind of ride that wave of excitement that I had. And I had been excited about this pattern from the beginning. It's been out for 4 months now, maybe 3, I don't know. It hasn't been very long, that I know. And I thought, you know what, why not just knit it while I'm excited about it, instead of waiting 3 years and leaving this yarn in my stash. And also I have a stated goal to knit more blue things this year. So, you know, knit yourself a blue sweater. So here I am knitting a sweater. I like it. I am not sure, you know, I'm kind of between sizes, so that's my only complaint, is just that the pattern says if you're between sizes, size down to where you have, you know, no ease or 2 inches of negative ease. And like, I'm between sizes, so if I were to size down, I would have like 4 inches of negative ease, or 3, you know, it would be too much. But if I size up, then I have positive ease. I feel like when your pattern is that specific about how many inches of ease, you should probably make it possible for people at every size to achieve that. Just saying. But other than that, I think it's a really pretty pattern. It's very easy to do. I think it looks more complicated than it is, but it's really simple. And I'm enjoying what I'm getting out of it. Yeah, I'm enjoying it. So I think one of the things that is really positive is that essentially there's this repeat of you know, like a lace chart and increases that you do so many times. And for the size that's smaller, it's just one less repeat. So it's like up till that point, the pattern is the same. And then you would just do another increase. So I think I will be able to go for size 4, see how it fits, and if I need to increase one more time, do size 5. So that's really good. And yeah, I like that it is kind of not exactly a mindless knit, but very simple. I can take it with me. I haven't had to refer to the pattern very much. I can sort of visually, I can just look at it and know where I'm at. So it's really nice, and I'm really happy to be making it. I want to talk about inspiration and acquisitions kind of in one, because some of those things are like a Venn diagram with a lot of overlap. So I've already mentioned that I was doing some spring cleaning and organizing of my yarn and fabric stash. So one thing that felt really good is taking all of my large pieces of fabric out and measuring them, and then writing down on a slip of paper what the measurements are, how much of it I have, and rolling it up so that when I look at the fabric, it's not like stuffed in a drawer. It's actually labeled, and it's in a bin, and I can see it clearly. Which is just, I think, something I'm gonna do going forward, rather than having it, you know, folded. I'm gonna roll it up and label it so I know what I have. Part of how I got that idea was just, we've been doing antique shopping, and there's a lot of fabric and yarn at a local antique store, and I was, you know, looking at it. I purchased this fabric, I purchased some wool fabric, and just seeing it, you know, how they had it like neatly labeled, it was kind of inspiring. So and that's, you know, sometimes how if you do buy like dead stock fabric or fabric secondhand, that's how, you know, it's stored, and so it's like prepared, right? The other thing is that I was organizing my yarn stash, and I'm kind of at the point where my goal is to, I'm trying my best not to buy yarn that I could get at any time. You know, so most of the yarns that I like and that I want for future projects or whatever, or, you know, when I see a new sweater and I think like, oh, I want to knit that, and I start thinking about what I want to knit it with, generally speaking, it's yarn that is easily accessible at any time. So I like Harrisville Designs and Brooklyn Tweed and the Fiber Company and Holst Garn and, you know, the Jamisons and Jamison and Smiths. You know, I like yarn brands and types that are kind of always available, right? Like they may run out of a color every now and then, but like generally speaking, you could go and order that online or buy it in a store any day in any quantity, right? I don't work with a lot of indie dyed yarn anymore, and that's just how my tastes have changed over time. I find that the indie dyed yarn for me is more of an impulse purchase generally, and then it's harder to figure out what it's for, but I like to plan things. So, you know, having like a well-planned purchase is better, where it's like, I know what this is for. So anyway, I put all of my yarn in this cabinet, and that was kind of my like dream from the minute I saw this apartment that we were going to be moving to. And I, first of all, love the leaded glass built-in, but I put it all in here just to kind of say like, well, you know, it's easier to keep things moth-proof if they're in a limited space, because you can really, you know, stink it up from a moth's perspective with sachets or whatever, like fragrances that make it harder for a moth to smell the protein fibers that it's looking for. So I have a lot of sachets in here, and it's pretty fragrant when I open it, so that's good. And I intend to keep it that way. I also just like the idea of having all of my stash in one place so I can see it all. I don't usually like to have stash like where there's something behind something, so some of that is happening and I'm not happy with it. I would like to have like no more than 2 shelves like this ever. I would like to have nothing more than 1 layer deep, because I feel like as soon as it's out of sight, it's out of mind, and you forget you have something, and then you forget the thing that you know, like most of this I look at and I go, oh yeah, this is for that, and that's for that, and then I know what it's for and I'm more inclined to use it. So for example, these 3 skeins right here are the rest of my marble mount pullover, and I will pull one out to show it to you. See, I don't like when that happens, when you reach in and things start rolling out. So this is from Hazel Knits. That's what that is. And so every time I look at this in my stash, it's like I haven't caked it up yet, but I know it's for that. Also, I'll just quickly say I do not alternate skeins. If it's from the same dye lot, that's good enough for me. I like pooling. I think that's the point of buying yarn that isn't dyed perfectly evenly all over, right? If I wanted it to look like all one consistent color, I would not buy hand-dyed yarn. So, that said, when I look at certain yarns, I know what they're for. I know what's leftovers and I know what's like, this is intended for. So a lot of these are for specific projects. And yeah, and I think I'm just like looking at it, feeling like I need to be really intentional about what I invite into my stash. And so, you know, I think this is something that's very personal, and I'm a fan of Marie Kondo and the KonMari philosophy, I guess you could call it, because her whole thing is that only you know how many blanks you need, right? Whether it's pairs of shoes or books or whatever, like, you know what feels right to you. And so what feels right to me is to have like less, but also to have it on display so I see it and I know what I'm gonna get. Store it in a way that makes sense, and you know, like kind of like a place for everything and everything in its place. I don't know. So it's just been kind of like a project of spring cleaning and spring inspiration for me to like organize it better. I don't know about you, I just get like these like waves of motivation for organizing sometimes, and then I feel like if I don't do it now, like I won't feel like doing it later, so I just got to do it. Yeah, that's pretty much it. That's the story of this. I do have a new acquisition in here, which was like me completely failing to follow my own rule, and I bought a sweater quantity of this to make myself a Felix pullover. And this is the sort of thing that I could have bought it at any time from multiple locations, but my favorite local yarn store had it, and they had enough in the color I wanted. For some reason, they tend to have lots of this in all the colors I don't like. I don't know. So I kind of felt like I needed to buy it at that moment, but then in hindsight was like, I just wanted to buy yarn that day. Like, let's get real. So yeah, I have a few other acquisitions that are from my antiquing adventures that I'm excited to share because they are so unique. So let me pull these out. Okay, I hope you're ready for the most exciting buttons that anyone's ever had, because I bought these vintage buttons and they are exquisite. They are amazing. It's interesting to me that so this is like, I don't even know how well you can see it, but basically there's a floral pattern on these buttons. There's like a bunch of tiny flowers on these metal buttons. We went to the Pabst Mansion, and which was the home of the founder of the Pabst Brewing company, and they had doorknobs that had this basically the same design, and I was like, wow. So that was really cool. I bought this truly bizarre belt buckle that is like super goth and creepy and is an owl. It's so death-like. I love it. There's a little corner of my heart that's like goth. I don't know. There was a bunch of English paper piecing stuff there, and I wanted to, it looked like somebody made an entire quilt of like hexy flowers and then they like took it all apart. So I was gonna buy, I was like, oh man, I want this, but I was like, realistically, what am I gonna do with like this entire quilt's worth? So I just bought 2 of the big hexy shapes that they had pieced and then removed. So the thing that united them all was this center fabric. So I have no idea how old these are. I don't know when they were made. I don't know who made them. I really don't, I don't know anything about them other than they're really cute. And I thought I can commit to making like a pillow cover with a hexie on each side, 1 pink, 1 purple. And that felt doable. That felt like something I could actually do. But it was amazing because somebody took the time to piece all of these, and they're pretty nicely sewn. I mean, the stitching is pretty nice on them. Other than the parts where it was ripped out, and you can tell they put a lot of thought into their color combinations and everything. So I was like, wow, I love that this is like just some mystery project that someone passed along. The last acquisition from the antique store was, it's kind of funny because it's yarn. There was this skein of nature spun in this like crazy hot pink color called Cherry Delight, which is to me not really cherry at all. It's much more of just like a fuchsia or like, I don't know, just a hot pink. It's really great. And we had gone to this antique store weeks ago and it was there, and I was like, oh, that color. And I have been wanting to make this hat. It's a pattern that was released like maybe last year by Coiled and Stark, and it's a reversible beanie, so it's worsted weight, and it's kind of like that Musselburgh hat that everyone's making, but it's in my opinion it's cuter. And I think it's called the Mindy beanie. So it's like just a really cute 2-color beanie, but you can kind of show the other color through. And I was like, okay, I really wanted to do one side pink. I knew that for sure. And I was like, I don't know what the other side would be. But for whatever reason, again, I could buy this yarn brand new for like $3 more. And I could get it anywhere, but I don't know. When we returned to the antique store, it was still there, and I said, I guess I better get this. So it's been wrapped up. And you know, I'm pretty sure, like when I say antique store, like this place is a very curated, very fancy antique store. There's no junk anywhere in that store. Nothing in there is junk. Nothing in there is like faux antique. There's very few things that are not antiques. So they do have a couple like little vases and things, but for the most part, everything is an antique, a genuine like vintage thing, and not like vintage from the 90s, but like vintage from the 40s and 50s and 60s, maybe even older. They have a lot of handmade stuff. They have a lot of craft stuff, but it's all very well curated, and like the fabric is clean and, you know, free of stains, free of rips, all that kind of stuff. So probably like the messiest thing in that store is the English paper piecing stuff that I bought. And they were actually selling it as like a lot, but I just was like, I just want these 2 pieces. So they just charged me $1 each. The other thing I bought then to go with that hat is I bought this, I don't know about this. I've never even knitted with Lion brand yarn, but like they're kind of iconic. So I bought this to go with the pink because I thought like pink and black, what could be better, right? It's high contrast, it'll be fine. I'll have, also I like the idea of a black hat with a really hot pink edge, you know, if you just wear it right, then you get that little edge. So yeah, got this for $5. And I don't know, it says it's perfect for felting and all knit and crochet. But like the fact that they're emphasizing felting, it gives me pause. I don't know if that means anything. But I know that Lion is one of those brands that they have like natural fibers, they have not natural fibers, they have craft yarn, they have, you know, whatever. So they have kind of everything, the full spectrum of what you can get in a yarn, right, in terms of like fiber content. So if you have any experience with this yarn and if you enjoy knitting with it, I'd love to hear your thoughts. I have noticed that big box craft stores here in the Midwest have a better selection of these brands like Lion and Patons and things that are like, you know, tried and true. They've been around forever, but maybe people associate them with like kind of lower quality or unnatural, like plastic petroleum based fibers. But I have noticed like a couple Joann's and Michael's have like patent sock yarn and not just in crazy colors. They actually have one that's just black, and I was like, oh, black pair of socks, right? That's great. And then they have like, you know, real wool too. So yeah, I don't know. I'd love to know what you think of that. I feel confident that, you know, the Lion brand it's been around for a long time, so it's going to be good. And all of the yarn, I should say, in this antique store is like surprisingly good quality. Some of it is brands I think that maybe don't exist anymore because it's like vintage, deep vintage, right? This was from someone's stash that passed away, right? That's what it makes me think of. But you know, it appears to be all really good quality stuff. So there was one other thing that I got from the antique store that was so cool. New! We looked it up. This is from 1948, I think. So, new 10-piece braiding set. If you're an elder millennial or older, like me, I'm an elder millennial, you remember when everybody and their grandma had a rug like this in their home. It is fabric that is braided and then coiled and sewn in place. So I've been seeing people making rag rugs that are more of the woven style, where you have like a strung weft and then you weave, you know, like chunks of fabric through it. But this is a whole other kind of rag rug that was definitely very present in my grandparents' homes. You know, I just remember when these were everywhere. I had one of these rugs. This hobby kit brought me so much joy. And it's basically like, it's kind of like bias tape makers, but I just love that I bought this for like $10, I think. Yeah, $10. And it's like brand new in the package. Somebody got this in 1940 something and was like, yeah, sure, I'll do that. But one man's trash is another man's treasure, and I love it. I am looking forward to making a rag rug. And I think it would be a really cool way to use up old fabric, scraps of fabric. You know, if you have something like an old garment that you can't really sew something new out of, or that is like beyond repair, but like you want that fabric in your life still. I'm saying this because I have a blouse that I'm like, okay, it's gonna have to go into a rag rug because it's cool. I love the pattern, but I hate the fabric. So I end up never wearing it. So yeah, there's all kinds of cool stuff, but basically it functions just like the rope coil basket, the rope coil coaster. You know, I've been making some things with sewing coiled rope because it's fun and because it's sort of like one of those blank slate projects you can, you know, put your own color scheme and design element on. So yeah, I am looking forward to making some coiled rag rugs, and I just love the nostalgia of it. And I think I just must be, I don't know, I must be hitting an age where I'm just like, nostalgic for things, because every time we go antiquing and I see these things that remind me of like my great grandma's house, I get really excited. I'm just like, my great grandma had something like this, and you know, I don't know, there's something about it, right? So yeah, this is a really easy process. You're basically making what is like bias tape, and you sew the ends of 3 together, and then you keep running it through these, you keep running the 3 fabrics through there, and as you pull them out, you braid them, and then you are going to sew that together. So that was my exciting discovery, and I'm seriously going to use it. Seriously am. The only other thing I wanted to share that kind of falls under the inspiration, springtime feels, spring vibes, was a recipe I just felt like sharing. So I found this recipe for a lemon loaf from the website Tasty, and I had, I can't remember now, I think it's sour cream, but maybe it's yogurt in there, but I didn't have the regular kind, I had the low fat kind, and I didn't put frosting on it. So I made this recipe and I used low fat sour cream and I didn't frost it. And it came out so good. It was so light. It was almost like angel food cake. It had plenty of sweet lemon flavor without being like that kind of cloying, overly sweet. If you are familiar with like Starbucks lemon loaf, you know what I'm talking about, where you eat it and it's just like too sweet and you're just kind of overwhelmed by the sugariness of it. So I highly recommend this recipe. Most of the ingredients are things you probably already have, and it was easy and it was really good. So that is pretty much everything I have to share. I know it was a little all over the place, but that's what happens when I go a whole month between episodes. So if you like this video, go ahead and give it a thumbs up. Better yet, leave a comment. I love to talk to you. I love to hear your thoughts on, you know, whatever it is I'm rambling on about. And if you can think of somebody who would like to see this, go ahead and share this video with them. I would love that. So I will see you again in April. I also have a bonus episode coming out in April, and keep your eyes peeled for the pattern that I'm publishing, the Bayview cowl. All right, thanks. Bye.